Hello students, today I have come with a new lesson, I have a dream. In this video, you will get complete and detailed analysis of the text. This text is actually a speech delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. on 28th August 1963 from the Lincoln Memorial during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. So let us first know a few important facts about Martin Luther King Jr. He was born on 15th January 1929 at Atlanta in the United States. He was assassinated on 4th April 1968 at Memphis in the United States. He was a social activist, Baptist minister, and a leader of the American civil rights movement. He pushed to ban nuclear weapons, end the Vietnam War, and lift people out of poverty through peaceful protest. So you can see he had lasting impact on world peace. He advocated for equality and human rights for African Americans, the poor, and the victims of injustice. He was deeply influenced by the ideals of Mahatma Gandhi and Abraham Lincoln. In 1964, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for his nonviolent struggle for civil rights for the African American population. During that time, he was the youngest recipient of the award at the age of 35. Now, before moving on to the discussion of the speech, we need to understand a few important historical facts which are crucial to understand the speech. Number one, American Civil War. Number two, Jim Crow laws. And number three, American Civil Rights Movement. Let's begin with the American Civil War. American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. It was fought in the United States between the North, that is known as the Union, and the South, that is known as the Confederacy, over the enslavement of black people. Now, students, you must know that white people were not the Native Americans. They came to live in America from England and gradually became the masters of their newly acquired land. For cheap labor, they started bringing the Africans as slaves to work in their plantations. Slavery was in practice in America from the 17th century, but we know that America declared independence in 1776. So, and we are talking about 1861 to 1865. That means that was the Declaration of Independence was only on paper. Even after the actual independence, slavery continued to be practiced there in America. Now, what was the reason of the American Civil War? The primary reason, rather. Southern states of America were agriculture based, and so they needed a tremendous human force for the tobacco, cotton, and sugarcane plantations. The southern states legalized slavery, whereas the northern states tried to do away with it, as they were influenced by the waves of industrial revolution. The labor force in the South included nearly 4 million enslaved blacks, means 40 lakh slaves. To understand their plight, students, you must watch a movie. It's a very short movie. The name of the movie is 12 Years a Slave. I have also provided the link in the description box. Please watch the movie. So, as a result of the American Civil War, slavery was finally abolished in 1865. So, the abolition of slavery brought freedom to the slaves legally, only legally, but the attitude that had sustained slavery in the South for more than 300 years did not end with the war. Now, let us know about Jim Crow laws from 1877 to 1954. During this period, these laws were in effect. So these laws enforced racial segregation in the South, advocating separate but equal facilities for the African Americans. Southern US passed laws requiring the separation of whites from persons of color in public transportation and schools. Segregation was extended to parks, cemeteries, theaters, and restaurants. What does it mean? This means that there were separate designated spaces for the blacks and the whites. Now, what is American Civil Rights Movement? The Civil Rights Movement was a mass protest movement that started against racial discrimination and segregation in the southern United States in the 1950s. Through non-violent protest, this movement of the 1950s and 60s broke the pattern of public facilities being segregated by race. One very important incident of this period is the Montgomery bus boycott. I would like to tell you about this very briefly. On 1st December 1955, Rosa Parks boarded a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Instead of going to the back of the bus, which was designated for African Americans, she sat in the front. When the bus started to fill up with white passengers, the bus driver asked her to move. She refused. Her resistance set in motion one of the largest social movements in history, the Montgomery bus boycott. With this understanding of the American history, we shall move on to the text. This is one of the most influential speeches in the history of the world, delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. on 28th August 1963. From where? From the Lincoln Memorial during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin organized the march against Jim Crow laws, and it brought more than 2 lakh civil rights supporters on the street, making it one of the largest political rallies in the history of the world. So now let me read out the first line of the text. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So, what does it mean? Five score means one score means 20 years, five score means 100 years. So, 100 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand means they are standing where? At the Lincoln Memorial. So, they are talking about Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, let us know what is Emancipation Proclamation. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on 1st January 1863. So, exactly 100 years before this speech was delivered, announcing that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious areas are and henceforward shall be free. His proclamation changed the legal status of nearly 4 million slaves into free blacks. Again, students, mark that I have mentioned that this proclamation changed the legal status, not the original status of these 4 million slaves. If it would have changed the original status, then Martin Luther King Jr. would not have delivered this speech after 100 years. Okay. So even after 100 years, nothing much had changed in the status of black people. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation. What does it mean? Manacles means chains, and segregation, as you know, discrimination or separation. So the two phrases, manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination, are similar in meaning. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. The Negro finds himself an exile in his own land. In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. So, all of them have gathered here in Washington to encash the check. What has been referred to here as the check? The Emancipation Proclamation. The rights or the legal rights which were granted in the Emancipation Proclamation to the slaves were never given to them in reality. So they have come here to encash that check, to turn that check into reality. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. So, see, again, the Declaration of Independence has been referred to as promissory note. And this note was a promise that all men would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But that did not turn into reality. America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. So the check would not bring the the claimed amount. Okay, the when the amount, when a particular amount is written on a check and you cannot encash it due to insufficient funds, then you can call it a bad check. So as if America is lacking in those legal rights or those things. They have insufficient funds. They have they have not the required amount of freedom that they can give to the slaves. So now racial justice for all. So, but the African Americans refused to believe that there were insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of the nation. Why why didn't people believe that there were insufficient funds? Because America was really prospering during that time. Everybody looked up to America as as a nation where they can turn their dreams into reality. People gathered there to remind the authorities now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to open the doors of opportunity to all of God's children. They wanted to build the nation upon the solid rock of brotherhood, right? Okay. 1963 is not an end but a beginning. That is what Martin Luther King Jr. said. So, the year in which he delivered this speech, these revolts would continue until the bright day of justice would emerge. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. Okay, the blacks, the slaves, were not even granted citizenship rights, not even in 1963. He said, in the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. So he was very mindful about the actions that they were taking in the forms of march, rallies. Everything should be non-violent. They must not cause any harm to the other people or to the white people also. They must not satisfy their thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. They should never take recourse to physical violence. So he was indeed a true advocate of non-violence. They must forever conduct their struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. He urged the Negro community to be very careful in maintaining a good relationship with those white people who had extended their support to them, as he believed we cannot walk alone. Yes, that was indeed true because all white men were not bad. Many of them were in favor of the abolition of slavery and they also wanted the black people to be incorporated into the mainstream. So there is a question in the text which you will find has been repeated. When will you be satisfied? So Martin Luther King Jr. answered this question in the text itself. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. So they are not going to be satisfied till this time. As long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. So they demanded equal rights and they wanted the authorities to abolish this separate arrangement system, that equal but separate arrangements for the whites and the blacks. As long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. So they are living in basically inhuman conditions. So they wanted true freedom and essential human rights for themselves. As long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only, so all such signs should be removed from the entire country and the blacks should be given equal rights in the true sense of the term. As long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. So they wanted equal voting rights. Until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. So everything should be given to the blacks also, regarding them as human beings, as citizens of the country. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. So go back to Mississippi. This is a very famous part of the speech, these few lines. Go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. So this is what Martin Luther dreams of. He wanted such a nation where truths to be self-evident and all men are created equal. That one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. So the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners should be given equal opportunity, right? And they must have a kind of brotherhood among themselves. That one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. Okay, so this is what Martin Luther dreams of. That my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Again, a very important line of the speech. He wanted people to be judged by the content of their character. That one day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. So this kind of existence for the white and the blacks he dreamt of, that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Notice that he has referred to people as simply flesh, because be it white, be it black, all human beings are made of flesh and blood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, it is of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountain side, let freedom ring. So let us know a few important points about this song, My Country, It Is of Thee. This song is also known as America. It is an American patriotic song. It was written by Samuel Francis Smith. This song served as one of the de facto national anthems of the United States before the declaration of the Star-Spangled Banner as the official US national anthem in 1931. Okay, so now the national anthem of US is the Star-Spangled Banner. Let freedom ring from every corner. When we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. So, this speech was indeed a remarkable speech, because after this speech, certain important events took place. So Martin Luther King Jr. was named Time Magazine's 1963 Man of the Year, and a recording of the speech was added to the United States National Recording Registry. So I hope, students, you have understood the text, and students and other viewers, I really hope that you find this video useful. If so, kindly like, share and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video, and thanks for watching. Have a great day. Thank you.